I still remember the exact moment my entire world changed, and it had nothing to do with the day I was diagnosed with cancer. The moment that truly changed me happened years later, on what was supposed to be the happiest morning of my life. My own brother walked into my bridal suite with a smile that looked harmless, reached toward my head, and ripped away my wig in front of everyone. My mother laughed like she had just witnessed the funniest joke imaginable. They thought humiliation would break me forever. They never imagined that before the day ended, every ugly secret they had hidden behind closed doors would be standing in the spotlight instead of me. My name is Madison Carter, and I was 30 years old when I married the only man who never treated me like I was broken. Long before I became a bride, I became a cancer patient. Long before I wore a wedding dress, I wore hospital gowns and spent endless afternoons staring at fur bags while wondering if I would live long enough to build the future I had dreamed about. Those memories still live with me, not because I enjoy reliving painful moments, but because they remind me how strong people can become when life gives them no other choice. One of the greatest lessons I ever learned came from someone much younger than me. During one chemotherapy session, I sat beside a little girl named Emma. She could not have been older than 7. I was wearing a wig because I was ashamed of losing my hair, while she proudly wore a bright yellow cap covered with tiny flowers. She noticed me adjusting my wig and quietly removed her own cap, revealing her smooth bald head. She smiled as though nothing about it was unusual and told me we looked like twins. We both laughed until the nurses looked over to see what was so funny. Emma passed away a few months later, but I still keep the paper butterfly she folded for me during one of our treatments. Whenever life feels heavy, I look at it and remember that courage often comes in the smallest hands. Before cancer entered my life, everything felt ordinary. I had a steady job, an apartment filled with wedding magazines, and a wonderful fiancé named Nathan Brooks. We had been planning our future together, arguing over paint colors and talking about children someday. Then one ordinary morning, while getting ready for work, I felt a small lump that refused to leave my mind. I convinced myself it was probably nothing because I was busy and deadlines seemed more important than doctor appointments. 3 weeks later, I finally forced myself to schedule an examination. Looking back, those 3 weeks feel like an entirely different lifetime. When the doctor quietly explained that I had breast cancer, every sound around me disappeared. I watched her lips move while my mind refused to believe what I was hearing. People outside the office kept walking through the hallway carrying coffee cups and chatting about normal things, while my future suddenly felt uncertain. I drove home in complete silence because I could not imagine saying those words out loud to anyone else. Chemotherapy slowly took pieces of my old life away. Food lost its flavor, climbing stairs became exhausting. Friends stopped calling because they never knew what to say. The hardest moment came one morning when I brushed my hair and watched thick strands fall into the sink. I sat on the bathroom floor holding that brush for what felt like forever. It was not vanity that made me cry. Losing my hair made my illness impossible to deny. That evening Nathan came home carrying grocery bags. I stood in front of the mirror after shaving the last of my hair away because I wanted the decision to be mine instead of the disease. I could not even look him in the eyes. I apologized before he had the chance to speak. Instead of reacting with sadness, he walked over, kissed my forehead, and reminded me that the woman he loved had never been defined by her hairstyle. Then he disappeared into the garage and returned carrying electric clippers. Before I realized what he was doing, he began shaving his own head. When he finished, we both looked ridiculous. He had tiny scars across his scalp that I had never noticed before, and we burst into laughter together. For the first time since my diagnosis, fear loosened its grip on my heart. Nathan always knew how to make impossible moments feel survivable. Unfortunately, my family reacted very differently. My mother seemed more worried about wedding photographs than my health. She constantly wondered whether my hair would grow back in time for the ceremony, as if beautiful pictures mattered more than whether I survived to appear in them. My father rarely spoke at all, choosing silence whenever difficult conversations appeared. My younger brother Tyler treated my illness like a comedy routine, making jokes every chance he got. Every cruel comment was followed by laughter around the dinner table, and no one ever asked him to stop. Slowly, I realized I was fighting two battles at once. One was against cancer. The other was against people who refused to understand how deeply their words could hurt. Months later, my treatments finally ended. My scans showed no evidence of disease, And my oncologist smiled with genuine happiness as she told me it was finally time to start living instead of simply surviving. Nathan surprised me that same week by proposing all over again inside the peaceful hospital garden, where we had spent countless afternoons encouraging each other through fear. He wanted that place to become a symbol of hope instead of pain, and I said yes before he even finished asking. Planning the wedding became a fresh beginning. Nathan handled almost every stressful detail because he wanted me to enjoy the happiness I had fought so hard to reach. For a while, I truly believed the hardest days were behind us. Then, only days before the ceremony, I stopped by my parents' house with updated invitations and accidentally overheard a conversation that shattered every bit of confidence I had rebuilt. Standing outside the open kitchen window, I heard my mother tell Tyler that Nathan deserved someone who looked like a real bride instead of a woman hiding beneath fake hair. They laughed together as though my deepest insecurity was nothing more than entertainment. I quietly walked back to my car without letting them know I had heard a single word. I did not cry. Instead, something inside me changed forever. That evening I began gathering every cruel message, every broken promise, every unpaid medical bill they had claimed they would help with, and every piece of evidence proving how they had treated me throughout my illness. I was not planning revenge. Deep down, I simply knew that someday the truth might need a voice, and I intended to make sure it finally had one. The morning of the wedding arrived beneath a clear blue sky, and for the first time in years I looked into the mirror without seeing a patient. I saw a woman who had survived. My bridesmaids laughed while helping me adjust my dress, and I finally allowed myself to believe this day belonged to Nathan and me instead of the illness that had stolen so much from our lives. That peaceful feeling lasted only a few minutes before Tyler walked into the bridal suite carrying a wrapped gift and wearing the same smug grin I had seen my entire life. He stepped behind me, rested his hands on my shoulders, and before anyone realized what he intended to do, he grabbed my wig and yanked it from my head. Gasps filled the room as my veil slipped onto the floor beside it. I froze in complete shock while my mother clapped once and laughed. She repeated the cruel words I had overheard days earlier, saying the groom deserved a real woman instead of someone hiding behind fake hair. The room became painfully silent as every bridesmaid stared at them in disbelief. Before I could even react, the door opened again. Standing there was my oncologist, Dr. Melissa Harper, who had stopped by to personally deliver my newest scan results before the ceremony. She looked from my bald head to my family, then calmly asked who thought humiliating a cancer survivor on her wedding day was acceptable. Tyler shrugged and claimed it was only a harmless joke, because I was healthy now. Dr. Harper looked directly into his eyes and explained that surviving cancer did not erase the emotional scars left behind. She spoke about the countless patients she had treated over the years, parents who slept on hospital floors, husbands who shaved their own heads, and families who stood beside the people they loved instead of tearing them down. Her disappointment was impossible to ignore. She handed me an envelope containing my latest report. Across the top were the words "No evidence of disease." Tears blurred my vision as she smiled and told me she wanted this day to be remembered as my wedding day instead of another reminder of cancer. At that exact moment Nathan entered the room. He quietly picked my wig up from the floor, held it for a second, then looked at everyone gathered around us. He said he did not see a woman hiding behind a wig. He saw someone who had spent more than a year fighting for her life while still encouraging other patients to keep believing in tomorrow. Then he looked directly at my mother and asked what she saw. She could not answer. Nathan turned back to me and gently asked a question nobody in my family had ever bothered to ask. He wanted to know what I wanted. I looked at my reflection, then at the wig resting in his hands. Suddenly I realized I was finished hiding. I smiled, placed the wig back into its box, and walked toward the church wearing nothing except my veil over my bald head. As the doors opened, more than 200 guests turned to watch me enter. Instead of laughter, I saw smiles, tears, and quiet admiration. Near the front sat a young girl wearing a bright pink cap. She slowly removed it, revealing that she too had lost her hair. She smiled and gave me a thumbs up. In that instant I felt as though little Emma was somehow walking beside me again. The ceremony itself was everything I had hoped for. For one beautiful hour I forgot the pain of the morning and focused only on becoming Nathan's wife. Unfortunately, the celebration changed once the reception began. Just before dinner, Tyler proudly announced he had prepared a surprise video for everyone. Instead of showing childhood memories or engagement pictures, the screen filled with private photographs of me during chemotherapy. There I was asleep in a hospital bed, vomiting after treatment, connected to machines, and completely unaware those moments had ever been photographed. My heart nearly stopped as I stared at images I had trusted would remain private forever. When I demanded to know where he found them, Tyler casually admitted he had discovered them on my mother's old laptop. She had taken those pictures while driving me to treatments after promising they would never leave her phone. Nathan immediately unplugged the projector before another image could appear. Then he faced every guest and read a letter he had secretly written during my final chemotherapy session. In it he promised that if I ever forgot how brave I was, he would spend the rest of his life reminding me. By the time he finished reading, almost everyone in the ballroom was crying. The hotel legal director soon informed us that several guests recognized confidential hospital information still visible in the photographs. One of those guests happened to be the hospital's chief privacy officer. He calmly questioned my mother and Tyler in front of everyone. Both admitted they never had permission to copy or publicly display those medical images. Their own words exposed everything. My father finally confessed that he had known about the slideshow ahead of time but remained silent because avoiding conflict had always seemed easier than defending his daughter. Hearing that truth hurt even more than the insults. Instead of shouting, I calmly walked to the center of the ballroom. I told Tyler that making people laugh was never worth another person's tears. I thanked my father for teaching me that silence protects the wrong people. Then I faced my mother and explained that she had not lost me because of cancer or because I wore a wig. She lost me every single time she laughed while someone humiliated me. I removed my veil completely and proudly introduced myself as a cancer survivor who refused to be ashamed anymore. One by one every guest stood and applauded. Not because they pitied me, but because they respected the truth. Then the wedding planner handed the DJ a flash drive I had given her weeks earlier after overhearing my family conversation. The screen lit up once more, this time playing an accidental audio recording from my mother's phone. Everyone heard her planning to expose my bald head so Nathan might cancel the wedding. They heard Tyler promise to make sure everyone laughed. My father weakly suggested they stop before giving in to silence again. When the recording ended, nobody defended them. Their own voices had done all the talking. Life moved forward after that day. Investigations into other dishonest decisions my parents had hidden for years eventually caught up with them. While Tyler lost the promotion he had been celebrating because his employer considered his behavior completely unacceptable, I never had to seek revenge because the truth carried enough weight on its own. Nearly a year later my mother visited my office carrying a box filled with childhood photographs she had kept from me. She apologized sincerely for the first time in her life, but some bridges collapsed long before people realized they should have protected them. I thanked her for returning what belonged to me, wished her peace, and quietly closed that chapter forever. 5 years later Nathan and I returned to the same ballroom for our anniversary celebration. During the evening a young bride approached me with tears in her eyes. She had survived cancer too. And she told me she almost canceled her wedding because she was afraid people would judge her bald head. After seeing my story, she found the courage to walk down the aisle exactly as she was. As I hugged her, I finally understood something that changed my life forever. The people who tried to make me feel ashamed ended up giving countless other women the strength to stop hiding. Tyler believed pulling off my wig would reveal my greatest weakness. Instead, it revealed the strength I never knew I had, and that became the most beautiful wedding gift anyone could have given me.